restate your name for the record?
Richard Young.
We're going to get into it in a moment, but over your right shoulder is a mannequin, which displays the clothing of Sergeant Morales, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Would that mannequin, in your opinion, generally be consistent with Sergeant Morales? Did you know Sergeant Morales prior to his death?
Yes.
Okay, generally consistent with his, I guess, height, physique, and so forth?
Yes.
Okay, the clothes appear to fit, other than maybe, it's obviously sitting on a glass thing that might elevate him a little bit, but generally the clothes appear to fit it as it would have been worn by Sergeant Morales.
Yes.
Okay, will that assist you in explaining to the jury the location of the various bullet defects on or about Sergeant Morales' clothing?
Yes.
Okay.
Members of the jury, this mannequin is being used as a demonstrative aid only to display exhibits that have already been admitted into evidence. The mannequin is not evidence, and you are not to consider it as such. It will not be taken back to the jury room when you retire to deliberate because it's not evidence.
Your Honor, if I could get the witness to step down, I'd like to continue with this
Yes, sir.
testimony with respect to the crime scene. Mr. Young, when we left off, we were now out at the Naylor crime scene, and you had talked to us about the shell casings collected from the south end of Naylor, and now we moved up to Sergeant Morales' vehicle here, and we discussed all of these shell casings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, as you examined the exterior of Sergeant Morales' car, did you observe the evidence of a bullet strike or a bullet defect in the vehicle itself on the exterior?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's in evidence for the record. We have 63 back up on the screen. Using this photograph first, can you indicate where this bullet defect approximately is located, and then we'll get a close-up of it?
There's a left quarter panel, rear quarter panel by just below the gas cap.
Okay. All right, and that's going to be State's Exhibit 72. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead and describe what we're looking at.
Okay, this is a bullet strike. You can see the bullet entered in this area, started to enter through the metal, and then struck some thicker metal here, and then came back out.
First of all, with regard to the bullet associated with that bullet strike, did we ever recover that?
No, we did not.
Now, can you give the jury some idea of directionality of that particular bullet strike based upon your observation of it? Like when we talked about the plate, can you do the same thing with this?
Yeah, I can give you a general idea.
Okay.
Basically, you can see there's a slight angle here, so the bullet would have been coming in this direction.
Okay.
And then you would have to been off to the side of the car a little bit to actually hit the side of the car. So they have to be standing somewhere around the trunk in that general area.
All right. And again, we talked about the angle at which Sergeant Morales' car was. So this would be the left rear of Sergeant Morales' car, right?
That's correct.
And so this would be the part of the car that would be angled away from the location at which Detective Bennett or Deputy Bennett was located, right?
That's correct.
And I think you mentioned this a little bit on your cross-examination prior to lunch, but you all went back out there on a later occasion with metal detectors in an effort to see if you could locate this particular projectile?
Yes, we did.
All right. Let's go to State's 73 in evidence. Okay, what are we looking at here now?
You're looking inside of Sergeant Morales' patrol vehicle, front seat section.
Okay.
Across.
I mean, other than the obvious evidence of blood and so forth on the seat, my understanding of blood on the seat, is this kind of your standard supervisor vehicle?
Yes.
Again, it has lights, correct?
Correct.
All right, and what are we looking at? What is this?
That's his laptop computer.
All right, it was on when you got there and began working the crime scene?
Yes, it was.
All right. Then we look at State's Exhibit 74, and what are we looking at here?
That's his driver's seat. Of course, that's his laptop computer.
Okay.
Center console area.
The computer itself, what does it sit on?
There's a stand that it's mounted on that you can rotate out of the way or back in front of you so you can type.
All right, and we're going to get a close-up of that, but I'm putting an arrow up here kind of between where the keyboard is and where the screen is, and what are we looking at there?
That would be a bullet strike.
And And I think this is a State's Exhibit 75, you see the bullet strike there?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, the bullet that's associated with this bullet strike, was it recovered from this computer?
No, it was not.
All right. Showing you State's Exhibit 76, just a close-up of that.
Close up of the bullet defect.
Okay, State 77, what are we looking at here?
This is looking from the passenger side. It's the back of the laptop computer.
Does that reflect the point at which the bullet exited that computer?
Yes, it does.
And I know we're going to talk about this later with other crime scene investigators, but when you've got these 2 points, does it assist you in identifying the flight path of a bullet?
Yes, it does.
And then I think we just have a close-up State 78. What is that?
Close up of the exit of the computer, back of the computer.
And then State 79. What are we looking at here?
That is a bullet hole in the passenger side door.
Okay, so now in this photograph, the door is open, but at the time this bullet struck the door, can you tell based on the flight path, and we'll get into that in more detail, what the direction, whether or not the door was open or closed?
Yeah, the door would have been closed.
All right, now at the conclusion of these photographs that documented the location of evidence and document how Sergeant Morales' car appeared when you arrived, at the conclusion of that, the evidence was collected.
Correct.
And was the car removed?
Yes.
And where was the car taken?
The car was taken out to a building out by the Emergency Operating Center on West Midway Road.
And was a bullet flight path analysis done on the vehicle at that time?
Yes, it was.
And did you have the assistance of other members of another law enforcement agency in conducting that analysis?
Yes, we did. The Indian River County Sheriff's Office Crime Scene Unit came down and did all the trajectory.
About how many days after Sergeant Morales' death on the 28th, do you remember?
It was a few days. I think it was Thursday, maybe.
Now, when you all conducted the flight path analysis there at the EOC, did you attempt to gather projectiles, fired bullets from within Sergeant Morales' vehicle?
Yes.
Now, the hole depicted here in 79, was this door panel removed?
Yes, it was.
And was a fired bullet recovered from that area?
Yes.
Let me show you State's Exhibit 80 and ask you if you recognize that.
Yes, this would have been the recovered projectile from that door.
Okay, where would it have gone?
It was down here, the panel was down.
Okay, so the bullet can, go ahead, say where it was recovered in there?
It was the lower part of the door, it had fallen down.
Okay.
The bottom part.
And for the record, what's been marked for identification, State's Exhibit 80 contains the bullet from that door?
Yes.
We'd offer an evidence, State's Exhibit 80.
Objection.
Yes, sir.
Now, defense objection be admitted to States 80 in evidence.
So obviously we're going to get into the bullet strikes to Sergeant Morales' body, but right now we're focusing on bullet strikes within the car. Did you discover during the course of your examination on scene the presence of another bullet strike to the car, the interior of the car itself?
Yes, we did.
And where was that?
That was on the center dash area.
Let's take a look at State's Exhibit 81. Can you kind of orient us where we are, what we're looking at?
Yeah, this is a close-up of the center dash area above this AM/FM radio. There's a steering wheel, you can see it's kind of blurred there. It's a center dash area, just above it.
And what's this?
That is the bullet strike. You can see it actually struck up here and then entered through there.
Okay, so there's a deflection to that particular bullet strike. And I think we have State's 82. And that's
This is
just
close-up of the center bullet strike.
And again, the same question I asked you, once the car is transported from this location out to the EOC and the flight path analysis is conducted on it, did you all dismantle portions of the dashboard and the interior of the car in an effort to locate that fired bullet?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 83. Yes, sir. State's 83, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what's contained in State's Exhibit 83?
The projectile that was recovered from the heater core, actually.
All right, and so as we look at this photograph, can you tell us where the bullet would have been recovered to within the area of the dashboard?
The dash is down here. So the heater core is behind the dash.
Okay.
It's down below the lower section of the dash, center dash area, passenger side.
Okay, so as we look at State's Exhibit 82, it would be from the left of the photograph down and to the right of the photograph, somewhere over there.
Correct.
Okay, Your Honor, at this time we'd offer in evidence State's Exhibit 83.
Objection.
Yes, sir.
Defense objection be admitted as State's 83 in evidence.
Now, as a crime scene investigator, is it common practice for you to attend in a shooting incident that involves a death, to attend the autopsy?
Yes, normally, yes.
Okay. And as a crime scene investigator, does attending an autopsy assist you in the process of reconstructing a shooting scene?
Yes.
Okay. Do you rely, as part of your duties and responsibilities, and in your profession, do you rely on the physical evidence that you observe at an autopsy in identifying bullet flight paths and things of that nature?
Yes.
All right. Now, with regard to the autopsy involving Sergeant Morales, did your agency request the assistance in that process by another law enforcement agency?
Yes, I did.
And who?
Indian River crime scene unit responded to that.
And again, that would be the same crime scene unit that was utilized in conducting the flight path analysis in this case?
That's correct.
Makes sense because they also attended the autopsy, correct?
Correct.
Now, during the course of the autopsy, are you aware of the fact that an additional bullet and bullet fragments was recovered from the left arm of Sergeant Morales?
Yes.
Okay, I want to show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 90. Was that item ultimately turned over to you?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And do you recognize that exhibit?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, what is that?
It's the projectile, the fragments from his left arm.
Okay. Your Honor, we'd offer in evidence State's Exhibit 90.
Objection. Defense objection be admitted as State's 90 in evidence.
Now, I want to do, before we discuss the clothing, Sergeant Morales' clothing and include here, I want to discuss with you how many bullets were recovered during the course of your investigation. How many total fired bullets were recovered during the course of your investigation?
5.
Okay. The first bullet that we talked about this afternoon or before lunch was recovered at the hospital. Where was that recovered from?
His right shoulder.
Okay. The second bullet was recovered by you. Where was that recovered from?
From the shock plate of his vest.
The vest. The third bullet was recovered, as you've indicated here this afternoon, in the door.
The door.
Okay. The fourth bullet would have been recovered from where in the car?
The heater core inside the dash.
Okay, and then the last bullet we just talked about, which was recovered from where?
Sergeant Morales' left arm.
Okay. Now, that's 5 bullets, correct?
Correct.
Right. Again, you have how many shell casings outside Sergeant Morales' door?
7.
7. So we're missing 2 fired bullets, correct?
Correct.
Do you have any bullet strikes that would account for at least one of those fired bullets?
Yes, on the rear left quarter bit.
Okay. And where is the other bullet? Where is the 7th bullet?
We do not know. It was not recovered.
Was not recovered. It wasn't recovered on the north end of Naylor, and it wasn't recovered on the south end of Naylor.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to ask you to take your, well, actually, I'd like you to remain there, because I want to talk to you about the closing. First of all, I'd like to talk to you about the items here that would indicate that this individual was a law enforcement officer. Can you talk to us about the patches? What do the patches represent?
The badges of the sheriff's office.
Okay. And what do these items here on the arms represent?
Sergeant chevrons indicating he's a supervisor.
Okay. And talk to us about this. What does this represent?
It's the sheriff's star.
Now we have placed the microphone back on. How was that operated?
Okay, it's push button. It's connected to your walkie-talkie, and you just push and talk up here as opposed to having to pull the mic out or the walkie-talkie out to talk on it.
Okay, so if you're in your car and you were driving, you could talk on your shoulder saying, you know, X, Y, Z?
Correct.
Is that how it's utilized?
Yes, and there's an earpiece so no one else can hear what's coming over the radio.
Okay. And then, obviously, there's the belt. We've discussed with Sergeant King the items on the belt, but various different items on the belt, correct?
Correct.
All right, now what I'd like to do with you, if I could have Sergeant Morales' firearm, please. For the record, this is going to be State's Exhibit 27. And can you get this out of here for me? Get that out?
You'll have to cut it off.
Yeah. And so this locking mechanism here obviously would be something that's added after the fact, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that would go where here on Sergeant Morales' duty belt?
And then,
And again, can you tell the ladies on the jury, what is this item here?
that's a strap to hold it in, safety strap. That normally when the gun's down all the way, this will come over the back strap and hold it into the holster.
Okay. And that's one of the items, that's one of the safety mechanisms you have to defeat before you can remove the weapon.
Correct.
All right. All right, so let's go ahead and take that out. I'll put it back in here. Let's talk about the locations on Sergeant Morales' uniform where you observe the presence of bullet defects. Can you identify for the jury where the first bullet defect is that we can note?
Yeah, there's one here, and there's stuck to the shock plate of his vest right up here.
We give you that. And if you could go ahead and open the, I don't know if you can, it looks like they safety pinned in here together. But if we were to open it up underneath, he would have his bulletproof vest?
Vest is on.
Okay. And was there a corresponding bullet defect in the house and then the one that was observed in the vest plate?
Yes, I showed previously.
Okay. And maybe you can just undo one button there and we can see it. Yeah, because it's been cut off.
It's all.
Okay. All right.
Hole there, and then there's the
Subsequent hole in the vest plate itself. And then we recovered that, and that is in evidence, correct?
Correct.
And then is there an additional bullet defect in Sergeant Morales'
Yes.
clothing here?
Right next to his chevron here. There's a, you can probably see it.
Young, speak up a little bit.
Speak
I know
up a
y'all
little
can
bit.
hear each other, but we can't hear you over here.
Next to the what you call it, the chevron?
The chevron, the sergeant chevron, there's near the middle stripe, there's a hole.
Okay. All right. Let me just see if I can just go ahead and demonstrate where that is on.
Go up there, you can see it better.
Okay, so for purposes of how it is on the mannequin, it displays the fact that this is kind of to the back of the chevron or to the back of the sleeve, if you will, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And is that the sum total of the bullet defects in Sergeant Morales' clothing?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me take a seat. All right, I have no further questions for the witness at this time, Your Honor.
Answer.
No other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Young. You can step down. Just leave them know where they can reach you if they need you. You'll call your next witness, please.
Yes.
Today called Mark Chapman.
Chapman. Pierce, your place on the road.
Do you swear or affirm that evidence you're about to be able to do the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Good, I just have one moment.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Mark Chapman, C-H-A-P-M-A-N.
And Mr. Chapman, what's your profession?
I am a firearms examiner at the Indian River Crime Laboratory here in Fort Pierce.
And how long have you been here with our laboratory in Fort Pierce?
Since February of 2005.
And that's located on the college campus?
Correct.
Prior to coming to work here in our crime lab, do you have any training and experience?
I have a bachelor's degree from Indiana University. In October of 1999, I was hired by the Indiana State Police Laboratory in Indianapolis, Indiana, as an IBIS technician. At that time, I was trained in firearm safety and handling, as well as how to operate the IBIS computer. IBIS is an acronym. It stands for Integrated Ballistics Identification System. It's basically a computer database that's filled with images of bullets and cartridge cases that are either recovered from crime scenes or from the firearms that I test fired at the laboratory. The system correlates these images and tries to link previously unrelated crimes. I worked in that capacity until January of 2004, when I began training to become a firearms examiner. At that time, I was given various books and periodicals to read related to the discipline. I was tested on that material. Around the same time, I began shadowing a qualified firearms examiner, my trainer. I observed his exam methods as well as gaining hands-on experience analyzing items of evidence and utilizing different techniques. Eventually, my trainer provided me with numerous practice cases to complete. These cases were checked and documented. Part of my training also consisted of touring various firearms and ammunition manufacturing facilities, as well as attending seminars related to the discipline. My training was complete in January of 2005. I was hired by the crime lab in February of 2005, and I continue to attend training as it becomes available to keep current with the policies and procedures related to firearms identification.
Now, when you started with our crime lab here in 2005, you were the only full-time firearms examiner, is that right?
Correct.
Now we have two full-time firearms examiners.
Yes.
Among your duties there at the crime lab, do you look at firearms to determine if they operate properly and if they are in fact firearms?
Yes, I perform function examinations of firearms as part of my duties.
And were you asked to do that on a few firearms related to this case, or on two of these?
Yes.
We'll start with State's Exhibit 24. Take a look at that item and see if you recognize the exhibit and the contents. Get your green card right over your mark.
Yeah, I can see it. Sorry. On the outside of the box, under the screen card, I have the lab number, the item numbers, and my initials written. There's a envelope inside that contains a cartridge that has the same information written on it. And the information on the firearm, including the serial number, matches what I have written in my report.
All right. And State's Exhibit 24, Deputy Bennett's gun, did you test it to see if it was a properly functioning firearm?
Yes,
And was it? Is it?
it is correct.
Other than the firearm itself, what other items were submitted along with it in that particular exhibit?
Along with it was a magazine and 9 cartridges.
And the 9 cartridges, I'll have you, this is as good a place as any for you to explain to the members of the jury what a cartridge is, what a casing is, and what a projectile is, and how they all come together When you say cartridge, is that an unfired bullet?
Correct. A cartridge is a single unit of ammunition. It's what would be loaded into a firearm. It consists of the case, the powder inside the case, the bullet, and the primer. And basically what happens when a firearm discharges, the cartridge is in the chamber of a particular firearm, the individual pulls the trigger, and the firing pin strikes the primer portion of the cartridge. The primer is pressure sensitive, just like a cap gun. So when it's struck by the firing pin, it detonates. This detonation in turn ignites the powder that's inside the case. The hot gas is built up, and the bullet is pushed down and out to the barrel of the firearm. And the cartridge case is what remains in the chamber. And depending on the type of firearm, in this case, this is a semi-automatic pistol, it's designed to extract and eject the cartridge case from the chamber.
In this case, the 9 cartridges that were submitted in the same exhibit in States 24 are all unfired, is that right?
Correct.
And what type of ammunition are they?
They're all 45 auto caliber cartridges. The manufacturer information on them is Speer, and the design is typical of Speer gold dot bullets.
And are gold dots bonded?
Correct. Yes, they're a bonded type bullet, the way that they're manufactured. The jacketing, it's a copper jacketed bullet. So basically, you have a lead inner core, and you have a copper jacket that surrounds that core. And the way that the bonded bullet is manufactured in this instance, it's essentially, you would have your lead core. This is a very simplistic way of explaining, but you have your lead core in a bath. You have copper ingots in another bath. The lead core, let's say, has a positive charge. The copper has a negative charge, and basically that copper is attracted to those lead cores, and the longer you leave it in the bath, the thicker this copper material develops around the lead core, and that's how these bullets are jacketed. So it basically creates a very strong bond between the copper and the lead.
And does that prevent the jacketing from coming off once it's fired and strikes a target?
Correct. If these bullets can separate, pieces can come off, but the lead and the copper will always remain together no matter how small the fragment. There's always a portion of lead and copper remaining adhered to one another.
All right, and how many, what is the maximum number of cartridges that Deputy Bennett's gun there, State 24, will hold?
The magazine will hold 13 cartridges, and if an individual wanted to, you could completely fill the magazine so you'd have 13. And the magazine is designed to be inserted between the grips of the pistol. It's called the magazine well. But if you wanted to, an individual can actually pull the slide to the rear, drop a cartridge into the chamber, let the slide come forward, and then insert a full magazine. So you now have 14 cartridges in the firearm.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at a series of exhibits, States 85 to 89. As she's looking for States 89, we'll start with States 85, if you can take a look at that. And I'll get you a pair of scissors. permission, don't put that one away, I'll have you step down and with it in a second.
Okay, on each there are 5 manila envelopes. Each envelope has the lab number, the atom number, and my initials written on it. Each envelope has a 35 millimeter film canister. The same information is on that. And inside each canister is a fired cartridge case.
All right, now with states, which one do you have still open there?
I have states 86.
Okay, and if you could step down with states 86 with the court's permission.
Yes, sir.
And what is that item? Explain it to him again, please.
Okay, this is a cartridge case that's been fired in the firearm. And the head stamp has the manufacturer and the caliber information on it. And it's a Spear 45 auto. And you can,
Well, I was going to say, let's start with you and describe to them what a full cartridge was, and this is a unit of that. This is the casing, correct?
Correct.
And can you show them on that casing where the firing pin would strike the primer?
As you can, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a small indentation on the primer. That's where the firing pin struck it. In this case, the firing pin was an elliptical shaped firing pin, so it has kind of an ellipse shape or depression to the firing depression itself.
And is that, we're about to get into your examination of that, is that one of the things that you look at, the firing pin impression?
Correct. When I'm conducting a comparison, that's one of the characteristics that I come up with as a firing pin impression.
And inside that casing, it's empty now, correct?
Correct.
And what was in there before it was the firing pin struck the primer and started the process in motion?
So the powder would have been inside the case, and then the bullet is seated in the mouth of the case, which is listed right here.
You can turn your step. So, looking at those 5 exhibits, stage 85 through 89, did you examine them microscopically?
Correct.
And explain to the members of the jury what it is you're looking at when you're looking at casings to make a determination as to if a particular firearm fired the casings.
For a cartridge case comparison, I have to look at 2 types of characteristics, class and individual. Class characteristics are characteristics that I can use to narrow the total number of firearms that these particular cartridge cases could have been fired in. If you remember a minute ago, I talked to you about the caliber information on the head stamp. That's a class characteristic. So most likely this was chambered in a firearm that was, fired in a firearm that was chambered for a 45 auto caliber cartridge. The firing pin impression shape was elliptical, so the firearm should have an elliptical shaped firing pin in it. And the breech face marks on these cartridge cases are parallel. The breech face is the area that the head of the cartridge sits when it's chambered. There's a hole in the breech face called the firing pin aperture. That's where the firing pin protrudes and strikes the primer. Well, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You have energy pushing the bullet in this direction. That case is pushed to the rear against the breech face. And there's marks on this breech face as well, and now they become impressed on the case head and the case primer. In this instance, all 5 have parallel breech face marks. So basically, the firearm that I compare it to that these could have been fired in has to have an elliptical shaped firing pin and parallel breech face marks. The pistol in States Exhibit 24 is a 45 auto with an elliptical firing pin and parallel breech face marks. So at this point it tells me that these 5 could have been fired in that pistol. The next step is to actually look for individual characteristics that are in those 2 components, the breech face and the firing pin. Basically, when those components were manufactured at the facility, the tools that were used to shape those components to make that firing pin elliptical and to create parallel breech face marks left behind microscopic imperfections. And it's the reproducibility of these imperfections from cartridge case to cartridge case that makes a comparison possible. So what I did at the laboratory is I test fired the firearm, recovered the test fired cartridge case, and I compared that cartridge case to each of the 5 cartridge cases. And I looked for those microscopic imperfections. And I was able to find enough of these imperfections or unique characteristics to determine that the 5 cartridge cases were fired in the pistol in Stage 24.
And so the 5 casings recovered from the southern end of our crime scene on Naylor are matched to Deputy Bennett's firearm, Exhibit 24.
Correct.
I'll collect those back from you. Now, I think you already said that State's Exhibit 24 will hold up to 14, 13 in the magazine, and 14 if it's around his chamber, correct?
Correct.
So we have 5 casings there.
Correct.
If that was fully loaded, how many cartridges would we expect to find in State's Exhibit 24 if it fired, fully loaded before it fired those 5?
9.
And that's what we have in State 24?
Correct.
Let me take those first, and then with the course commission, I'm going to have you step down with Stage 24 and show them what we're talking about with the magazine and the well.
You want to pull it out of the box?
Yeah, if you can. Is it strapped in? It's not anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Magazine too?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Do you want to take these okay? And
Yeah, why don't we unload those out of the,
okay.
you can set them up, or you can put them right there in the box. Thank you. All right, now with that exhibit, that's 24, that's the firearm and the magazine.
Correct.
And that firearm is made safe by a,
There's a trigger lock and there's also a zip tie.
I'm having trouble hearing the witness.
Chad, I know y'all can hear each other, but you got to speak up so we can hear you over here and get the court reporter can get you.
Speak up just a little bit. I know we're facing away from those folks. Just pick your voices a little bit. I'm sure they can hear you.
Okay.
All right. So with Stage 24, the magazine that was submitted with it, does it operate with that firearm?
Yes, it does.
And if you could, you've already described that once it's loaded, you can slide that into the magazine well. Could you show the folks what you mean by the magazine well?
So here's the magazine well between the grips. This gets inserted in here. Locks into place.
Thank you. You can return your seat.
Okay.
And if you could put that back in the box, and I'll come with the next round of items. Exhibit 49, please. And then I'll need 50. State's Exhibit 49 in evidence. The defendant's gun, do you recognize that?
Yes. Again, the lab number, the item number, and my initials on the envelope. And the information on the pistol matches what I have in my report.
And did you have a chance to check that firearm for functionality?
Yes.
And is it in fact a firearm?
Yes.
And does it operate as it's designed to?
Yes, it functions properly.
Did you also look at State's Exhibit 50 that is there in front of you?
Again, the lab number, item number, and initials on the envelope. The same information's on the 35mm film canister, and engraved on the cartridge inside is the same information.
And that's a full cartridge?
Correct.
So that's an unfired bullet. And that particular States 50 came from the chamber of States 49, is that correct?
Yeah, that's what is stated on the agency and ID tag.
And a previous witness, I believe, testified. Now, with States 50, what sort of ammunition is that?
It's a .45 auto caliber cartridge, and PMC is the manufacturer.
And what are those initials? P?
PMC.
M as in Mary?
Correct.
All right. And that would obviously fit in States Exhibit 49, the defendant's gun, 45.
Correct. It's chambered for a .45 auto caliber cartridge.
And is that particular cartridge a hollow point?
Yes, it has it's a copper jacketed hollow point designed bullet.
All right. State's Exhibit 51.
On the large manila envelope, the lab number, the item number, and my initials, item numbers. Inside is a magazine and a smaller manila envelope, same information on it. And inside that envelope are 2 cartridges with the same information engraved.
When you received it, were they separated like that, or did you separate them?
Correct, they were separate like that.
And how does the magazine in States 51 fit with the firearm, the defendant's firearm, Exhibit 49?
The magazine fits and functions in the pistol.
And with that magazine and that pistol, what are the maximum number of cartridges the defendant's gun will hold?
The magazine will hold 10, and then if you chamber 1, you could have 11 total in the cartridge, in the pistol.
Now I'm going to show you States Exhibits 65 through 71, so that I can tell that that's the gun. Okay, I'll have you start looking at those, 65 through 71.
Right, we have 7 manila envelopes. It's hard to see, but my lab number, item number, and initials underneath the green tag on each envelope. The same information is written on the 35 millimeter film canister. And on each side, inside each film canister is 1 cartridge case, again with the information engraved on it.
Did you have a chance to look at each of those 7 cartridge cases to examine it in the same manner you described earlier in comparing it to a firearm?
Yes,
And did you do that in this case comparing it to the defendant's gun, Exhibit 49?
correct.
And what conclusions did you reach?
I was able to determine that all 7 were fired in this pistol in States Exhibit 49.
And you did that based on the same method of the breech face marks and the firing pin?
Correct, they all shared similar class characteristics, and there was a sufficient quality and quantity of individual characteristics in agreement for me to identify all 7 back to the pistol in States 49.
Now, if the evidence was that the firearm in States 49 was always kept separate from the clip and that it was not a round chambered, how many would be the maximum that would be in that firearm? 10?
Correct, the magazine will hold 10.
And with the 7 we have there, we expect to find how many left in the magazine or in the chamber when after those 7 have been fired?
There would be 3 remaining.
And in fact, in the States 50 and 51, you had 3 unfired cartridges submitted with this firearm?
Correct.
All right, we're going to move on to the next group of items and package all that back up. We're still dealing with since we're not asleep. States 29. Which is a projectile. Shelf there to the right. No, those aren't. These are, this is 50 and 51 here. We're looking for 29. That wasn't the one closest to me. All right, so States Exhibit 29, I'll have you take a look at that and see if you recognize it.
Okay, on the outside of the manila envelope is the lab number, item number, and my initials. The same information is on the brown paper bag inside. the original container that it was submitted in, and then a smaller manila envelope that I repackaged it in and on the bullet itself.
All right, if I have you step down, and we're going to talk about States 29. Please show the members of the jury what you have there and describe to them the relevant points of interest.
Okay, this is the bullet, the portion that leaves the barrel of the firearm. It's a hollow point design. Hopefully you can see how it kind of mushroomed. And this is the lead core, that's the gray material. And then here you have the copper jacket. When it was its original shape, it's more conical. What happened is this hit some softer fluid material, which caused the hollow cavity to expand and mushroom backwards like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm having a really hard time hearing.
You can speak up first.
Okay. So when this hit a softer or fluid substance, the hollow cavity opened and mushroomed, and you can see where the actual jacket is starting to separate from the core. This is not a bonded bullet. Basically, this was probably this type was, you have a copper cup, essentially, and you have a lead core. The two are mechanically pressed together, essentially. That's how this kind of copper jacketed bullet would have been manufactured.
Okay, and the jacketing would peel back, and that one was recovered from the right shoulder of Sergeant Morales. That would have peeled back as it passed through it.
Correct, yeah. A hollow point is designed to open up and become larger, so its surface diameter is greater. Basically, it's designed to stay in an individual and not to overpenetrate, and all the energy from the bullet traveling is maintained in whatever it struck, and therefore becoming more efficient or effective, essentially.
Thank you. You can return to your seat, and once you're there, I'll ask you the comparison that you do when making a comparison to a projectile to a firearm is you're looking at different things than you are when you're looking at a shell casing. Is that right?
Correct.
And in fact, but for the rare example, you can't match a shell casing to a projectile without a gun to match each two, correct?
Correct.
Right, you can match casings to firearms and projectiles to firearms, but except for the rarest of circumstances, not projectiles to casings.
Correct.
All right. So in looking at State's Exhibit 29, the bullet that was recovered from at the hospital, can you tell us, what did you look at and how did you compare it to State's Exhibit 49, the defendant's gun?
It's similar to cartridge case comparisons in that I'm looking for the same type of characteristics, class and individual. But as was just pointed out, the bullet comes in contact with a different part of the firearm, mainly the inside of the barrel. So as it travels down the barrel during discharge, it comes in contact with the rifling inside the barrel. Rifling is made up of what's referred to as lands and grooves. And they basically look like lines inside the barrel that spiral or twist. Depending on the manufacturer, there'll be a specific number, and they'll either twist to the right or to the left. And this twist, its sole purpose really is to impart spin on the bullet. So as the bullet goes down the barrel, it engages the rifling, starts spinning, and this spinning motion stabilizes it as it exits the barrel. It's just like a football. The football's thrown in a nice tight spiral. It's very accurate and stable. Well, because the bullet material is softer than that of the barrel, typically lead or copper, the lands and grooves will impress themselves around the circumference of the bullet. As an examiner, I can actually see the lands and grooves. I can count them. In this case, this bullet had 8 lands and grooves around the circumference with a right twist. And I measured the diameter, and I was able to determine that it was typical of a .45 caliber bullet. The pistol in State's Exhibit 49 is chambered for a .45 auto caliber cartridge, which has a .45 caliber bullet. It has 8 lands and grooves and a right twist in the barrel. So again, just like the cartridge case comparison, at this point, I have class agreement, and this tells me that the bullet could have been fired in the pistol. The next step was to look for individual agreement. And just as I described before, tools were used to manufacture the rifling inside the barrel of this firearm, and these tools left behind microscopic imperfections. And every time a bullet passes down the barrel, these imperfections scratch the surface of the barrel. And that's what I looked at under the comparison microscope. I test fired the firearm in States 49, and instead of comparing the cartridge case, I compared the bullet and I was able to find a sufficient quality and quantity of these microscopic imperfections in agreement to determine that the bullet in stage 29 was fired in the pistol in stage 49.
So the bullet there, 29, the one recovered from Sergeant Rouse's right shoulder, was a match to the defendant's gun, Exhibit 49.
Correct.
I'm going to ask you to look at State's Exhibit 90 in evidence. Package that up.
On the outside of the middle envelope, the lab number, the item numbers, and my initials. The same information is on the plastic bag, smaller manila envelope. And inside the manila envelope, we have a copper jacket fragment. What's typical of a lead core from a bullet. And then 2 small pieces of lead.
From those, I guess that's a total of 4 pieces in States 90. Which of those was significant for you to compare lands and grooves?
Would be the copper jacket fragment. This is the portion that would have come in contact with the rifling inside the firearm.
And did you look at States 90, the bullet that was recovered at the autopsy from Sergeant Rouse's left arm? Were you able to make a determination as to the firearm that particular projectile was fired from?
In this instance, I was only able to find class agreement. Basically, for whatever reason, it could be from damage or some other circumstance, the individual characteristics did not reproduce. I was not able to identify it to the pistol in States Exhibit 49. It just has class agreement, so basically it could have been fired in the pistol.
And the fact that both Deputy Bennett's firearm and the defendant's firearm were 45, does that lead you to not be able to eliminate Deputy Bennett's firearm as having fired that projectile either?
Correct. It too shares similar class characteristics. It's a 45 auto caliber firearm, and it also has 8 lands and grooves with the right twist in the barrel.
Right, and you weren't, when you make that comparison, you're not privy to the physics of the crime scene that may or may not make it not likely or possible that that bullet came from Deputy Bennett. You can only base it what you see on that exhibit, States 90.
Correct.
Was there anything else significant about that particular projectile with the copper jacket?
I can tell you that there was complete jacket core separation, which is not typical of a bonded bullet.
And knowing if the jury's already learned that Deputy Bennett was only firing Spear gold dot bonded cartridges, would that fact eliminate States 90 as having been fired through Deputy Bennett's firearm?
Based on it not being a bonded bullet, if you could say for certain that he only fired the Spear gold dot, then yes, that is not typical of a Spear gold dot bullet.
As you said, there'd be something, the lead and the jacketing would have remained bound.
Correct, yes.
Mr. President, let me interrupt. I know the other day y'all want to take a break at 3. Do you always take a break now since it's 3 o'clock? I haven't forgotten. Some do? Okay. We'll take just a few minute break. If y'all step in the jury room, if anybody needs to smoke, they'll take you downstairs. Please don't discuss the case.
I got off at 7 this morning. I went home and took a shower and came here. Very hard to stay awake from the west. Yeah. What are you gonna do? You off? Staying busy. How are the kids? How's Jason? Good. Good? Yeah. Is he working up there?
Not yet.
Didn't he either?
No.
And then she talked to